The royal garden was silent, save for the rhythmic scrape of stone against stone. Luna stood by the central fountain, her fingers tracing the delicate, metallic veins of a silver rose. It was a perfect afternoon. Then, the wind shifted. A low, rhythmic thrum vibrated through the ground, rattling the fountain basin. From beyond the high stone walls, a thick, violet mist spilled over the top like ink into water. It did not drift. It surged. Luna stepped back, her boots crunching on the gravel as the vapor touched the nearest flower bed. The silver petals turned ash gray in a heartbeat. The vibrant luster drained away, leaving behind brittle, wilted husks that crumbled into dust at the slightest touch. She reached out to push the mist away, but the cold air bit into her skin, forcing her to recoil. The decay moved with terrifying speed, replaced by a sharp, metallic tang that burned in her throat. Luna turned toward the training grounds, her pulse quickening. Luna sprinted across the stone courtyard, her breath hitching in the stagnant air. She reached the center of the training grounds, expecting to see her 4 brothers practicing their drills. The space was empty. No shouts of exertion, no clatter of practice weapons. Only a profound, unnatural stillness remained. She scanned the perimeter, her eyes darting between the stone pillars. Then, she saw them. Near the weapons rack, 4 figures stood in a tight formation. They were not her brothers. They were stags, carved from translucent, shimmering glass. Luna approached, her footsteps echoing against the hard floor. She stopped inches from the nearest stag. It was perfectly still, yet a faint, rhythmic pulse rippled through its glass chest, like a heartbeat trapped in crystal. The stag slowly tilted its head. Its glass eyes caught her reflection, showing a face pale with realization. She looked toward the distant mountain gate. Luna grabbed a heavy cloak from the rack, wrapping it tight to brace against the mountain air. She turned to the 4 glass stags and gestured toward the gate. They moved with a soft, melodic chime. As she stepped beyond the kingdom walls, the path to Star Peak rose sharply before her. The trail was paved with jagged blue stones. The higher she climbed, the thinner the air became. A sudden, violent gust of wind howled down the slope. She pressed her side against the rock face, gasping as the wind tore at her balance. She was losing her grip. Then, the stags closed the gap. They circled her, forming a tight, protective perimeter. Their neon pink veins flared with intense, rhythmic light, creating a shimmering wall of heat that pushed back the freezing gale. With the path illuminated by their inner glow, Luna pushed forward, her footing finding purchase on the glowing stones. The final incline leveled off into a plateau of absolute stillness. Above, the moon hung at its zenith, casting a silver sheen over the jagged rocks. Luna stepped forward, her boots crunching on the frost, and stopped. Before her, the mountain air tore open. A golden waterfall cascaded from the stars themselves, spilling down into a basin of liquid light that churned with silent, rhythmic intensity. The radiance was blinding, forcing Luna to shield her eyes as the glow washed over the summit. She took a tentative step toward the pool, the heat radiating from the liquid warming her skin. Suddenly, the light in the basin began to coalesce. It spiraled upward, thickening into a massive, towering figure that lacked a solid frame. Its form shifted like stardust caught in a gale, constantly reforming and dissolving. The entity stood between her and the basin, its presence pressing against her senses like a physical weight. The guardian raised a hand, its fingers elongated and shimmering, and pointed directly at the pool of light. Then, it shifted its aim to point at Luna's throat. The guardian rumbled, a sound like grinding stone. To save them, you must surrender your voice, so the forest may regain its song. The words hung in the thin air, vibrating against her skin. Luna looked at the basin. The golden liquid swirled, reflecting the stars above, indifferent to her humanity. She thought of the empty courtyard and the cold, glass statues waiting in the dark. She did not hesitate. She moved forward, her boots sinking into the soft, glowing silt at the pool's edge. She knelt, the stone biting into her knees, and reached out. Her palms hovered over the surface. The liquid felt heavy, like molten honey. She plunged her hands into the basin. A sharp, icy pull surged from her chest, traveling up her throat and down into her fingertips. It felt as if a physical thread was being unspooled from her lungs. She opened her mouth to scream, but no sound emerged. The air in her throat turned to static. Her voice vanished, stripped away by the light, leaving a hollow ache where words once lived. In its place, a hum of pure, vibrating energy flooded her veins. She pulled her hands back, dripping with liquid starlight. Her throat was silent, but her fingertips burned with the power of 1,000 suns. She stood, her chest heaving, and turned toward the waiting stags. Luna walked toward the 4 glass stags. They stood motionless, their translucent bodies cold and unyielding against the mountain wind. She raised her hands, the golden light pulsing rhythmically against the dark summit. As she reached the first stag, she pressed her palms firmly against its chest. The glass did not yield at first. It hummed, vibrating with a high-pitched, discordant frequency that fought against her touch. Luna pushed harder, channeling the energy from her chest through her shoulders and into the frozen form. A hairline fracture appeared near the stag's neck. With a sound like 1,000 bells shattering at once, the glass exploded. Golden sparks showered the clearing, swirling into the air like fireflies. Where the stag had stood, a man appeared, gasping for air. Luna moved instantly to the next, then the third, and the fourth. Each touch was a violent release of light. The glass shards dissolved into mist before they hit the ground. One by one, the brothers collapsed onto the stone, their chests heaving. Luna stood back, her hands still flickering with the remnants of the starlight, watching as they stood up and looked at her in silence. The descent from the mountain was a blur of exhaustion and relief. Back within the city walls, the brothers looked to the throne, but the old order had dissolved with the curse. Luna led them not to the palace, but to a vacant, stone-walled structure near the city center. She cleared the dust from the heavy oak tables, her movements precise and rhythmic. This would be their sanctuary. She gathered rolls of thin, translucent silk and sheets of pressed paper, stacking them high. Her brothers watched, their hands still trembling from the cold of the glass. As she began to work, she did not use words to command them. She simply placed tools in their hands and guided their movements with a firm, silent touch. Luna moved through the workshop like a weaver of light. She folded the paper into intricate geometric shapes and stretched the silk over wire frames. When she brushed her fingertips against the finished lanterns, they did not just glow, they hummed. A soft, melodic vibration resonated from the silk. She hung the first one from the rafters, and the entire room shifted, the shadows retreating into the corners. The brothers began to follow her lead. Night settled over the city, cooling the stone streets and silencing the day's labor. Luna sat on the balcony, her gaze fixed on the vast, ink-black expanse above. Beside her, hundreds of lanterns waited, their silk surfaces pulsing with a rhythmic golden warmth. She reached out, her fingers trailing over the nearest frame, and pushed it gently into the air. It rose, caught by a steady breeze, and drifted toward the clouds. One by one, she released the rest. They ascended in a slow, synchronized stream, turning the dark sky into a tapestry of floating embers. Below, The citizens emerged from their homes, heads tilted upward, watching the lights drift like stars returning to their home. The lanterns hummed, a collective melody that vibrated against the cool night air, wrapping the city in a blanket of sound and radiance. Luna watched the glowing butterflies that had gathered around her hands, their wings flickering in time with the lanterns above. She did not need to speak. The light she cast was a language of its own, a testament to the bond she had restored. The sky burned with a soft, steady brilliance, marking the end of the long shadow. The last of the lanterns drifted beyond the horizon, blending into the brightening sky. Luna remained on the balcony, her hands resting on the cold stone railing. The air shifted, losing the sharp bite of the night and gaining the soft, damp warmth of the coming morning. Across the city, the first shutters opened. People stepped onto their porches, looking up at the fading trails of light that still lingered in the upper atmosphere. Luna watched them. She felt the weight of the past months dissolve, not through speech or declaration, but through the simple, observable reality of a city that was breathing again. She raised her hand. A cluster of glowing butterflies, born from the residual energy of her craft, swirled around her fingers. They moved in perfect, silent harmony, mirroring the rhythm of her own pulse. She realized then that the silence was not a void, it was a bridge. Every gesture she made, every flicker of light she produced, carried more weight than any spoken command ever could. The sun broke the horizon, spilling liquid gold across the rooftops and turning the dew on the balcony into scattered diamonds. She leaned back, closing her eyes to feel the sun on her face. The struggle was gone. The kingdom was whole. She did not need to speak to know that her work was finished, and that in the quiet, she had finally found the peace she had fought to secure. The world glowed, steady and bright, under the first light of a new day.